John Paul Moran here from Go USA for the Them versus You show and the OpScore report. I'm here with Vivek Ramaswamy running for United States President. Vivek could be our next president. Very nice meeting you. Thank you for.
It's good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on. I appreciate this. We're excited to have you here.
Yes, thank you. And tell me why you're running for president. I mean, you have a very unique background. You're young. You're 37?
I am 37, yep. So I just think we're in the middle of this national identity crisis, where if you ask people my age, and I'm the first millennial candidate to ever run for president as a Republican, okay? You ask people my age or any age in this country, what does it mean to be American today? You get a blank stare in response. I think that vacuum is the black hole at the heart of our national soul. And I think the conservative movement, we have an opportunity to step up and answer that question, define the American national identity that we're longing for. And I think that's going to fill our hunger for cause and purpose and meaning that we've long been lacking. I've lived the full arc of the American dream in my life. This country's given me a lot. I've founded multi-billion-dollar companies. I'm the kid of immigrants whose parents came to this country with almost not a lot of money. I think that we can actually give back to this country and create that dream for the next generation if we revive those basic ideals that set the country into motion. I believe they exist, and I'm running for president to revive them.
Great. Well, I thank you for running for president. We talked earlier that my sixth-generation uncle is Thomas Jefferson.
My favorite president.
And we talked at CPAC, and your favorite president you mentioned was Thomas Jefferson.
Yes.
Can you tell me why? Because I'm kind of biased. Because
that's okay.
I do love Thomas Jefferson. I love all of them, all of the founding fathers. But tell me why you like Thomas Jefferson.
So it's a close call between all of them. Thomas Jefferson is my favorite one because he embodies the daring spirit of the American. You know, funny story was that he wrote the Declaration of Independence, but he felt like he needed a swivel chair. They didn't have swivel chairs back then. So he invented one. Think about that. Today we'd say, oh, you're not part of the expert class. You're not trained as an engineer. He was an autodidact. He taught himself. He was fearless. He actually he was a deeply religious and spiritual man. Took the parts of the New Testament that spoke to him, used razors and hand glue them together to create the Jefferson Bible. This is just a guy who, when he believed something needed to get done, he got it done. When he became president, he sent those Lewis and Clark expeditions because he believed we, the Americans, we're the pioneers, we're the explorers. And I think that's what speaks to me about him. And especially because even the way he's been remembered in history is for some of his sins, some of his attributes that we wouldn't celebrate today. To me, that represents his humanity.
That's right.
Because all of us are fallen human beings, but more than most, more than any I know even at the founding, he had those ideals. And so for the people today who'll speak about his so-called hypocrisies, I say that's the best evidence that he had ideals at all, because you could only be a hypocrite if you had ideals in the first place. And I think that stuck with me. I feel like I know him almost, you know, reading a lot of history, reading a lot of his work. The opening line of the Declaration of Independence, which he wrote, says we hold these truths to be self-evident. Then it goes, all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with these inalienable rights. But that opening line never sounded to me like the Thomas Jefferson I know, like your sixth grade uncle.
Yes.
And you know what I learned recently is that he actually didn't write that line. His editor, Benjamin Franklin, actually changed it to that. The original lines that Thomas Jefferson wrote sounded more to me like the Thomas Jefferson I know. He said, we hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable. It's a lot more powerful than just self-evident.
I agree. I did not know that.
I didn't know that till recently either. But it's just, to me, the embodiment of a man who captures the American spirit that's still alive in our country today. We just need to rediscover it. That's part of why I'm running for president.
Well, God bless you for that. Because
Thank you.
We need you and people like you back in the American fabric in politics. Because right now, I believe it's self-serving narcissists and people with other agendas and not American. And I personally believe, I'm not sure you should call yourself an American unless you believe in the tenets of America, because it's an idea.
Absolutely.
Right?
No, I mean, part of me on a bad day will say, look, we talk about illegal immigration in this direction, we got to say no to that.
Yes.
But you know what? If you don't want to be part of this country, there are plenty of other countries in the world that would be happy to have you.
That's right.
But if you want to pledge allegiance to this nation, then stand up and do it. Because if we don't start doing that, we're not going to have a country that our kids are taught to be proud of. I think it's part of what we're missing. 25% enrollment deficit in the U.S. military last year. What the heck is going on in the country? We've engaged in this self-loathing and self-hatred. I think we need to revive our self-confidence again. I think we can, but it's going to take leadership.
And leadership is contagious. You talk
Yeah.
about courage being
Courage
contagious
is
on your
contagious.
websites.
Yes.
And I love that line. And what's your, I mean, can you talk about that for a second? The courage is contagious, because honestly, you have to have courage to say you're proud of America.
Absolutely, these
right?
days anymore. And I was first personally in that position. So I was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar biotech company that I had founded. And even I was in a position when I had to make, or was pressured to make statements in favor of Black Lives Matter. I refused to do it. I saw firsthand what creates this culture of fear in our country. Fear has been infectious across America. We have an epidemic of fear in America. There is not a greater time, I would say, in my whole life where there was a bigger gap between what people were willing to say in private and what people were willing to say in public. Mm-hmm. You want to know what the health of our country looks like? If that gap is big, we're not doing well. When that gap closes, we're doing better. I'm running to close that gap. And so fear's been infectious, but I think, you know what? Courage can be contagious too. It's just going to take more of us exhibiting it. The homework assignment I give everybody, it's not to vote for me, not to do this or donate or that. Well, those things are fine in a presidential campaign. The one thing I ask, though, is that when you're the only person in a room, a boardroom, a meeting, a parent-teacher conference, whatever it is, you're the only person in the room who believes what you do. You have a civic obligation now to speak up and say it. And I can almost make a promise to you in return that most of the time, you're going to find that if you do that, you weren't the only person in the room who believed what you did.
Yes.
And that's how we discover that, you know what, even if we might have some small disagreements here and there on tax rates or whatever, those are details.
Yep.
But in the basic rules of the road, most of us still share those common principles. And that's how I think we push the America First, the unapologetic America First agenda further than anyone has in this country. And yet we unify the country at the same time. I know that sounds like a difficult thing to do. I believe firmly that is possible. That's what we're aiming to do with this campaign.
Well, it's your positivity is infectious.
Thank you.
I love the sound of it, and you might be glad to know that after 2 years of work, I ran for Congress. I mentioned in 2020, and I've got a lot of patriots behind this effort at Go USA to create this new rating system where we poll,
Love it.
we rate candidates based upon the basic principle is the politician working for the Constitution that they swear on,
yes,
and the will of the people that they're supposed to represent. What kind of representative are you if you say, I represent the people, but I'm against them on taxes, I don't believe in voter ID when 80% of people want voter ID, right? One thing after another, these people are not serving us, and they're also trashing the Constitution. Mm-hmm. So for me, you'd be fired from any job if you just didn't follow the rules at that level. You'd be fired the first second you walk in, right?
Sure.
So on the issues, about 8 out of 10 are with us.
Yes.
So we're not some fringe right-wing crazy people.
Far from it.
We are the, ready for this? We are the forgotten 80%. That little number.
That's right. They call it the silent
80%.
majority, the forgotten 80%.
Huge.
So it's funny you mentioned 80% because when I've been traveling around New Hampshire, I say the same
That's
thing.
the number. That's about
it's
the
not
number.
between, we shouldn't make this about Democrats and Republicans.
That's right.
The division there is in some ways made up. You have elements of both parties that betray the will of the people.
That's right.
The real answer is, are you pro-American or are you anti-American? Do you embrace the ideals on which this nation was founded, and are you proud to stand up for them and make a sacrifice for it?
Yes.
Or do you wish to apologize for a nation founded on those ideals? That's an 80-20 split. It's not a 50-50. And even half the remaining 20 are people my age or younger who were never taught those American ideals in the first place.
Yes.
We could even make it 90-10, which means 2024 could be a landslide election if we make it, if we take off the Republican-Democrat filters and put on the pro-American, anti-American distinction. It's the managerial class versus the everyday citizen, right? The bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., talk about firing them. What they say is those people can't even be fired. Well, I disagree with that, but that's the common wisdom in Washington,
When you get into be president, if you're president, please find a way to fire these people.
Oh, that's what we're going to do. That's the heart of our agenda.
You run companies, these people can't stay with their jobs. And by the way, that when I mentioned them versus you show, so what you were just talking about, my trademark line, it's not left versus right or red versus blue, it's them versus you.
I love that.
Do you like
I'm going to take that one to go.
Because
I talk
left
about
versus right or red versus blue.
I talk about it in
them versus you.
It's actually much tighter than I say it's the managerial class and the everyday citizen. That's what I say. But them versus you sums it up.
Yeah.
I think that once we wake up to that, I mean, this is a basic reality. It's not a Democrat or Republican idea. That it's this radical idea our founding fathers had. This radical dream that I have as a citizen.
Yes.
That the people we elect to run the government ought to be at least the ones who run the government.
That's right.
Yet today, it's not them. It's the bureaucracy that runs the show. And so this is where I think the next time an Anthony Fauci or a James Comey or a Merrick Garland reaches beyond their constitutionally ordained scope,
Yep.
you need to have a president who's actually going to do what the president is constitutionally empowered to do. You fire them. You fire the managerial industrial complex around them. You fire the legions of people under them.
That's
what I'm going to do as the next president.
That's going to be tough, but it's doable.
I think it's doable.
No one else can do it but the president.
Exactly.
The only one that can do it is the president. And
exactly.
if we can
without
flush out-
Congress's permission. I'm not going to ask Congress for permission or forgiveness because Article 2 of the Constitution says that the U.S. president runs the executive branch. And I'll tell you a perspective as a CEO and as an entrepreneur that I bring to this. If somebody works for you and you can't fire them, that means they don't work for you. It means you work for them.
That's right.
Really means because you're responsible for what they do without having the authority to change it. And I refuse to govern this nation in that way, but that's also why I believe it's going to take an outsider in the White House to get the job done. There's a lot of room for foot soldiers elsewhere in the political system, including career politicians, professional politicians. I'm not taking anything away from them. We're going to need a lot of people in a lot of roles across this country. But in the White House, I think the Republican Party in particular needs to be the party that puts the outsider in that job to actually get this job done.
Yeah, well, we had some experience that with Donald Trump. As
Yep.
you know, you'll both be on the ticket.
Of course.
Well, I mean, on the ticket too, at the
Yep.
primary level.
Yep.
And I know that there's a lot of parallels with Donald Trump's outsider
Yep.
position and yours.
Yes.
But you're bringing a lot of technology, and I mean, one thing I was going to ask you as well is, I want to ask you the top 3 things that you're concerned with here in America.
Yeah.
But as a technology guy, what's your concern about AI? There's lots of talk about
Yes.
the dangers of AI, and if you have people that are just totally technically disconnected, that's dangerous. I mean, I think there's an argument for we needing a technology person. When I ran for Congress, I was like, hey,
You need somebody who understands this stuff.
technology, because a lot of technology, people are making decisions, and they have no idea.
That's right, of the
technology.
implications. So here's the way I look at it, is that I think there are legitimate concerns with supercharged AI, like there are legitimate concerns with gain-of-function research
Yes.
that resulted in the COVID-19 pandemic. But what's the lesson you learn? We can't constrain ourselves here if China isn't going to do the same thing.
That's right.
So look at what happened with gain-of-function research. We banned it in this country. Anthony Fauci and others effectively went through the back door to fund it abroad, effectively landed in the Wuhan lab, only to create a megavirus that otherwise wouldn't have existed in nature in terms of how it spreads back in the United States.
That it was created in a lab.
Absolutely. I think there's
everybody should know that by
I think
now.
there's almost no doubt
Yes.
that it was created in a lab. It's a shame that it took us this long to arrive at that conclusion, because if you said that 2 years ago, you would have been banned on social media or on the internet.
Yes, when I was running for Congress, I couldn't say these things. We lost our YouTube channel because of it.
Unbelievable. See, I mean, the best ideas win when no ideas are censored. Well, the American way, I mean, they put the First Amendment for a reason.
That's right.
It's a precondition for truth. You need to be able to get the ideas on the table. It's a precondition for science.
Yes.
I think it's a precondition for peace, right? You shut people up, that's when they tear things down. So
Yes.
This is why free speech is so important. But back to the question of how you deal with these technological advances with managing the risk, we have to do it in a way that does not disadvantage the United States versus China. And I think that's going to come up in the AI debate as well. It's a big part of my view.